Hello once again, my friends. It's me, the voices in your headphones. Well, now that I'm back, what to talk about? Maybe work on that iceberg video I never followed up on. Maybe. More smile tapes? Soon. Just not yet. I'm slowly developing into a boomer, so let's talk about something old. This story starts where a lot of fiction does. On 4chan. It seems they have a propensity to be the origin of collaborative fiction that documents strange things in a clinical way. Right now, we have them to thank for The Backrooms in 2019. Before that, it was SCP from 2007. And even before that, we have what may be the first series to do such a thing, at least in the digital age. Hailing back from at least 2006, or at least that's the oldest known archive we have, there was The Holders. Hearing that name probably tingled a neuron deep inside some of you that hasn't been used in quite a while. And for those that have no idea what I'm talking about, let's get you caught up. The Holders was a collaborative fiction project that documented and told stories about objects and prizes with unique properties and anomalous traits. Looking at it with a bit of hindsight, I suppose you can consider it akin to a beta SCP series, since that took off only about a year following the earliest known Holder archive. Now, with that basic concept, let's get into some history. For the sake of transparency, I'm going to be paraphrasing pretty heavily from containmentfiction.net for the early history. They did the hard work in this part, and I'm not going to Matthew Santoro them. Go check out their website, they deserve some kind of recognition. Now, the story of the Holders started at latest in August 2006. The first post was known as the Holder of the End, which popped up on the ever-infamous random board in 4chan. The post started with these ever-iconic words: in any city, in any country, go to any mental institution or halfway house you can get yourself into. When you reach the front desk, ask to visit someone who calls themselves the Holder of the End. Should a look of childlike fear come across the worker's face, you will then be taken to a cell of the building. It will be in a deep, hidden section of the building. All you will hear is the sound of someone talking to themselves echo through the halls. It's in a language that you will not understand, but your soul will feel unspeakable fear. Should the talking stop at any time, stop and quickly say aloud, "I'm just passing through, I wish to talk." If you still hear silence, flee. Leave. Do not stop for anything. Do not go home. Don't stay at an inn. Just keep moving. Sleep where your body drops. You'll know in the morning if you've escaped. If the voice in the hall comes back after you utter those words, continue on. Upon reaching the cell, all you will see is a windowless room with a person in the corner, speaking an unknown language, and cradling something. The person will only respond to one question. What happens when they all come together? The person will then stare into your eyes and answer your question in horrifying detail. Many go mad in that very cell. Some disappear soon after the meeting. A few end their lives. And most do the worst thing you could do, and look upon the object in the person's hands. You will want to as well. Be warned, if you do, your death will be that of cruelty and unrelenting horror. Your death will be in that room, by that person's hand. This is Object 1 of 2,538. They must never come together. Never. And thus it begins. Interesting to see how such a simple story started a small phenomenon. This little story would be posted every now and again until suddenly there was a change in the script. On October of 2006, the first post of a follow-up was known. This time being the Holder of the Beginning. Then in December came the Holder of the Dark. In January of the following year, a new thread was made, and the Holders of the Beginning and the End are posted, along with 6 new stories. It's at this time that someone got the idea to host a website to keep these kind of stories and expand on them. After all, there's 2,538 objects. They had plenty of room to write more. But that's where I'm going to stop talking about the history. As interesting as it may be, I don't just wish to narrate everything that's on this page that somebody else made. They deserve the attention, and if you want the objective history, I'll leave a link in the description to their website. Now that we've established exactly where the Holders comes from, let's talk about the stories themselves. Just what are they about? What's the point? And why do you never hear about them nowadays? The first thing I wanted to bring up is how each story is formatted. As mentioned before, I'd call it akin to a proto-SCP, even down to the formatting. Each story is about a strange object with strange effects in a large catalog of other anomalous items. Though while SCP takes a cold, clinical, scientific tone, The Holders instead takes a more personal tone. Each story is told to you as a set of instructions, the things you must do, the things you will experience, and the horrors you will be subjected to if you fail in your task, or even if you succeed. The narrator is an unknown entity with incredible familiarity with the objects and will give you the exact instructions on what to do and what to say. In passing these tests, you're given an object with some kind of strange power or effect, or sometimes you're just plain cursed because that's what happens when you dabble in magic and mystical artifacts. And sometimes, nothing happens at all, and the item and trauma is simply yours to keep. So, my listener, you may be asking, why would anybody go through these kind of struggles for items that may or may not benefit you? Well, my friend, that's a good question. Anyways, let's talk about the recurring theme in the stories, and why that's likely to contribute to its lack of staying power. If you go looking for anything related to the Holders now, you can find an archive of its history, as I've read before, or you can find the series staying safe on the Wayback Machine. It may be strange to comment on something lacking staying power, since it is technically finished, as the 538 objects have been listed by various contributors, but let's look at it this way. SCP has been around for well over a decade now, and that's still going strong, gaining multiple series, and at this point literally thousands of articles and extra side stories. What does it have that the Holders lacked, however? I would say that it lacked variety. I know, a series of 538 articles lacked variety. How could that be? Well, the biggest thing is that all the articles tend to follow something of a cookie-cutter formula. It's almost always, go to any asylum or halfway house, ask to speak to this holder. If you're allowed, continue on, and if not, you die horribly if you're lucky. Go through some trial, it's next to impossible and maddening, and if you failed here, here's a vaguely detailed fate that's terrible and maddening. If you succeed, here's an object. Ominous line, they must not come back together. Almost every story follows the same formula and doesn't really expand too much or try to get too creative. Sure, it's unique in that what kind of challenges you can face or what kind of fate you have if you don't succeed, but beyond that, there's not much room for expansion or building on. The thing about SCP is that it let people get creative with an idea due to taking place in a vague but centralized environment. There was some kind of grounding factor and some recurring, loosely canonical characters that let people attach to and work from. I think what killed the creative growth of the Holders was the lack of that. Sure, there's a couple of notable names, such as Jack Empty, something akin to a boogeyman in the series, and Legion, who's notable for having an overwhelming majority of the objects, but people didn't really expand on this beyond a few scant stories. If something like this wants staying power, there needs to be some kind of anchor for people to rely on and expand from, but nothing ever really formed here. There was nothing that people could branch from to add on to more of the story. Part of me has to wonder how far this concept could have gone if there was just a few more creative people, if a few more liberties were taken to flesh out the universe. It just got a bit more attention. While it'd be fun to speculate on, sometimes it's fun just to take a moment to look back at old things that were and are no longer. Every story needs to end at some point, unless they become too large and bloated for their own good, such as SCP. And sometimes that creativity needs to be limited, or you get an absolute nonsensical clusterfuck like the Backrooms. And boy, you never want to go full Backrooms. While it was fun to take this old book off the shelf and flip the pages again, writing the script made me realize just how thin it really is, and how little story there actually was. I wanted to talk at greater length, but there's really not much you can pull from this. The story here is just deceptively thin. There's so much written, but it just says so little, and it repeats itself too much. Kinda like the script, to be honest. It may be worth checking out yourself if you never experienced it in the moment, but in my personal opinion, I think this one should stay on the shelf. Well, this is just a rambling mess that didn't seem to go anywhere, but I couldn't really find any other way to talk about the series, and I just really wanted to bring it up. So hopefully it was at least entertaining for a moment. I've been the voices in your headphones, and I hope to see you again. Or if you want to see me sooner, I have a Discord that will be linked in the description, so you can join my community of strange little weirdos. Until we meet again, stay safe, stay surreal.